It's funny to think that just a few years ago, a trip to the grocery store was comparable to a trip to the coffee shop, or even a trip to the bookstore. Mundane, forgettable, and on some occasions pleasant. Now I'd give just about anything to lock myself in a room and never come out again. After walking for what felt like hours, which was in reality probably about 30 to 45 minutes, I found myself among shelves with piles upon piles of boxes on them. Not a single one looked quite the same. Some were tall and fat, others maybe the width of my finger. But they were all filled to the brim with some of the ugliest shoes I had ever seen. They were all different colors and sizes, as though someone had just hit the randomize button on a shoe generator. Hope for the best. I managed to find myself in what I assumed to be the showroom. Large display podiums rotating quietly, showing off for no one to see. One in particular, though, caught my attention. It was a Pepto-Bismol pink stiletto shoe. My sister had a similar pair, but with a few key differences. It stood about a bookshelf tall and had a whole, very alive flamingo for a heel. Whoa. I gave it a gentle poke to the neck, but still nothing. It still just stood there, staring at me, flamingo-ly. This is so weird. Now, at this point, I sounded like a broken record. That phrase had long since lost all meaning to me. It's like what happened when you say the word bubble so many times it just becomes sounds. But I had to say it out loud, just to really make sure I wasn't dreaming. I had gotten tired of pinching myself about 5 days ago. It was starting to develop welts from it. I took a step and nearly biffed it when I slipped in a large puddle of dark water. The floor around it was thick with yellow and brown stains from water damage. Beside it stood an ugly sign that had "Hike Storm, Bring the Thunder" in electric letters. And the shoe sat floating above a cracked marble pillar. It looked like your typical running shoe, all except for the fact that the midsole and outsole consisted of a storm cloud that was raining steadily and shooting out little veins of lightning. I had to admit I'd probably wear those. I found myself wondering who or what could have designed those. Someone would have had to, but I suppose things just appearing out of the ether wouldn't be the strangest thing to happen here. The ether probably had much better taste than a bunch of fashion CEOs in a stuffy office room. I continued to browse the shoe zoo. Some shoes were just cardboard cutouts. Some were 5-dimensional and made my eyes hurt just looking at. And some were viscous puddles of gunk, somehow holding themselves into shoe shapes. It wasn't until I heard a low growl and the rattle of metal that I realized what the chains were really for. The sign said Apex Collection, and let me tell you, that wasn't just some pithy name. Next to it was a pair of pumas, not just the shoes, but actual very angry pumas. The giant shoes were attached to predatory cat legs, ones that ended in very large claws. They swiped and hissed at me as I quickly made my way past. I quickly found myself thankful that they were bound into place, but a new problem quickly arose. The ruckus they were making must have woken up the other shoes. As I moved faster and faster down the aisle, I started to hear barking. The boxes on the shelves began to rattle and some lost their lids. Sneakers, sandals, and bobs were now peering out of them while snarling and yapping at me like tons of small, angry leather dogs. Some even started chasing me, their little sharp teeth bared. I broke into a sprint once I was able to move past how perplexed I was with the situation. "This is some Dr. Seuss shit!" I yelled. The little beasts were fast, almost too fast for me to outrun, and they began nipping at my heels. One even managed to bite my leg. I couldn't help but wonder if that meant I'd turn into a wereshoe too at some point. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Once I could see the edge of the shoe department and the start of the women's apparel, I dove for it, aiming for an A-rack. When I came out the other side, I was somewhere else entirely. It was dark here. Cold. I almost preferred the shoe section more. I had no idea what department I was in now, if I was in one at all. Something about this place took my anxiety and cranked it up to a 15, as if it weren't already bad enough. It was so quiet I couldn't even hear the music that played over the speakers anymore. It was almost enough to want that god-awful candid retail radio back. Almost. Thanamart is a massive store. There's only one map of the place, and it's by the entrance, something I've only seen twice since I've been here. There's many departments that I've never even laid eyes on before. According to the map, the store stretches miles upon miles in every direction, which also means, God forbid, someone loses something or someone in here. It'd be like looking for hay in a needle stack. Wherever I had just appeared had no familiar landmarks, which meant I was very, very lost. The shelves here stretched high past the light beams and climbed up into the inky darkness that hung overhead. The store started to look slightly warped. The tiles weren't a square, and the floor felt like it was slanted at an upward angle in some places or downward in others. The shelves, as well as gargantuan boxes labeled with no language I had ever seen, began to lean and curve like I was walking through a funhouse. I tried my best to keep walking, to not peek over my shoulder at every few steps. If there was something behind me, I'd prefer to just not know about it. I forced myself to finally call out. Any sound I made strained against the tension in my chest from the growing, creeping fear. Fred? Fred, can you hear me? If he was here, there was no way he'd hear me, and no way in hell I could bring myself to shout. The only response I received was a heavy, lead-lined curtain of silence. It was an oppressive silence, the kind that leaves your ears ringing with the sound of your blood pressure rising. The kind of silence humans spend hundreds of years trying to forget about and fill with the sounds of electricity. The absence of sound felt primal, almost predatory. If I had my phone, I would have put in my earbuds and put on some music or an audiobook. Hell, I'd even have settled for white noise. And until now, I thought that it was creepier than the quiet. Wherever I was, even the tap of my sneakers against the tile was being drowned out somehow. I wanted to start yelling, but I was so afraid of what could be lurking in the spaces where the lights couldn't touch. My voice didn't peak over a croaked whisper. That fear response was setting in. The one you get as a child, the first time you get lost in a grocery store. The fear that you'll never see your family again. That you'll be trapped here. Forever. I want to go home. I want to go home and hide in my room where it's familiar, where it's safe. The loudest thing here was very, very quickly becoming my intrusive thoughts. It's funny, in a fucked up sort of way, how the human brain will just pick some of the greatest hits from your past like an evil jukebox when there's no real distractions. But I guess this one was appropriate. Fell into place seamlessly like a round falling into a chamber. I'd only been lost in a store once in my life, but it's easily one of my most vivid memories. My dad had actually forgotten me there. An old mom-and-pop store called the Farmer's Stand. I was stuck wandering around for almost 2.5 hours until the old woman who owned the place brought me to the police station when she saw me eating a loaf of bread right off the shelf. That was my second encounter with an officer, but there would be plenty to follow. The store owner, Miss Greta, would become a family friend, but I wouldn't see my dad again until I was standing beside his casket, watching him being laid into the ground. It had become a stain on my mind since the moment my all-too-young eyes watched as he was lowered into a deep, dark hole. A void in the floor. I don't want to say it appeared because that implies it was created. The space of nothingness in the floor rested inches from my feet. It was like a small section of the universe had failed to load in. What the fuck? A powerful bang of a shotgun going off cracked like thunder from the spontaneously appearing floor hole. My heart leapt into my throat as I fell backwards ass first, forcing myself to move and crab crawl away from whatever it was. The silence had been preparing my ears to take the brunt of the truly deafening sound. I sat for a moment, frozen like frightened livestock. My breath hitched in my throat and my heart pounded so hard it made it almost painful to breathe. A garbled voice spoke from the void. Maz, where are you? I'm sorry. The voice sounded strange, like it was struggling to speak, but didn't have the tools to properly make the words. A bloodied hand slapped wetly against the lip of the hole. The hand clasped onto the floor so hard the fingers trembled. The hand was purple with nails, practically shredded, and raised from scratching against something. Around the third finger, a familiar golden band. I began to see spots in the corner of my vision. No. That's not possible. This isn't happening. I'm losing my mind. A human form rose from the hole. It wore a black fitted tux and had dark brown hair caked in blood. The upper half of its face was in red and graying ruins. Brains and bone fragments shook loose as it pulled itself from the void. The shotgun, gripped in its right hand, hit the tile with a loud crack. It was barely a man rose from the void, heaving wet and ragged gasps. All I could do was sit and watch in horror as my father stood before me. His face, blown to pieces, dripped onto his shoes like a mask made of chewed gum. I am for... The malformed words echoed out from the only discernible hole left in his head. It was full of broken teeth and mangled tongue. His jaw swung like a tattered flag at the lower half of the head-shaped crater, where not even eyes or sockets were left. The sound of my father's voice, his decimated face, and broken stride as he now slowly limped towards me was too much. Something about the image in front of me pulled a loose thread in the back of my mind, throwing me back into that moment of pain and confusion when my aunt and uncle sat me down and told me, "Your father ate the barrel, Max. He's dead. He'd given up on me." The all-too-real phantasm took his gun and clumsily raised it towards me, aiming it so my eyes pointed right down the double barrel. He choked again, repeating the same disjointed drivel he had been sputtering. I'm so sorry. The thread tugged a little harder. This time I felt myself begin to unravel with it. I was sitting on my bed holding a rocket-shaped pillow. My dad sat next to me, and in his hands was a small, recently deceased rock dove. It was very much alive the night before when I'd rescued it. Sorry, Slugger, he didn't make it. My eyes were bleary from hours of shed tears, my mind straining to realize where I had gone wrong. But I thought he was going to be okay. I did everything I could think of. You did. It's not your fault. It's just how it is. My dad placed the little broken bird back into the box. He heaved a long sigh and hugged me. Things die, Max. Now it's your turn. The barrel of the gun was so cold it stung as it sat on the bridge of my nose. Dad, please don't, was all I could say. The words felt wrong. They caused the gears in my mind to grind against years of grieving. I heard a click, followed by a metallic check. I didn't know what on the gun made those sounds, but I knew what sound would come next. I closed my eyes, and I waited. Max, there's a call waiting for you on a brilliant pain erupted in my head with the sound of the page. The sound was loud. I could feel it on the floor beneath me and rattled in my skull. The bass of the horrible sound shook me down to the marrow. I could feel a hot gush on either side of my head, followed by a trickling warmth down my neck and collarbone. I couldn't even have the comfort of hearing myself scream. Passing out would be the only mercy I'd receive. Hey kids, it's tea time. And you know what that means. It's time for Ivory Monocle Tea. Ivory Monocle Tea is up and running again, and it's currently selling tea. And if you guys are like me and are addicted to playing Helldivers, hey, there's a brand new tea on there. And it's a Helldivers tea, and it's called Liberty. And I fucking love this tea. It's so cool. And I got to design the sticker for it. So if you've enjoyed tea from the Ivory Monocle Tea shop before on Etsy, you're gonna love this new tea. So make sure you check them out. If you like having a warm drink while listening to creepypasta stories, then hey, that's a great spot for you. And finally, as always, I want to thank everybody who is on my Patreon list. Especially, I want to give a huge thank you to Triller Tier Jackal, Brian Figueroa, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Lake Rattler, Viceroy Scorn, Disciple, Delaney Melton, Strategy, Wolf Jameson, John G. Luna, Sullyman, Juan Mendoza, Rock Bottom Smasher, Elias Nahero, Brandon Mendoza, Sneck, Brimstone Pendulum, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Victoria Schwartz, Victoria Miles, Aaron, Emma, Kemza, Brenda Crow, Elijah Munson, Lakeda Carrizales, Mr. Keepy Pasta Peebus Pleaser, Travis, Smiley the Psychotic, Richard Sundell, Buddha B, Dante Kincaid, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Mephistopheles, Cursepox Primarch, M, Jettis Pet, Verbal Horror, Jay Kearns, Mike, Himbo Jerry, Crusader Chocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estebean, Our Minute Second Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tally Sue, Cronut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hazy Nephew, Tommy Wall, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Corey X Kenshin, Diana Kraus, Jordan Humble, a man of many names, and every single one of you that's down there in the description, every single one of you that is able to give even $1, man, I cannot thank you all enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To all of you out there, have a wonderful evening and sweet dreams.